This is one of the most controversial books in America today. It's also one of the hottest selling books out there. Tom Woods is a New York Times best-selling author, and his latest book is Nullification: How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century. The book is an argument that state governments nullifying federal laws is a practice that should make a comeback, a way for states to declare laws, possibly even Obama health care reform, unconstitutional and non-binding. Tom Woods joins us now. Tom, welcome here.
Thanks.
What is nullification? You just heard Geraldo Rivera. He's not crazy about it. Tell us what it is historically and what it means and how it would work.
Well, it's Thomas Jefferson's idea, by and large, that the federal government has only the powers that are expressly delegated to it, and therefore, if it goes beyond those powers, if it reaches for something that wasn't given to it, then the states have to refuse to enforce it. In 1798, James Madison said that the states were duty-bound to resist if the federal government goes beyond its legitimate power. Right, this is not what you're taught in law school. I'm sure you probably learned it on your own, but we learn about federal supremacy all the time. What we don't learn is what the states historically have done and can do.
When the federal government enacted the Fugitive Slave Law, which basically said to anybody who captured a runaway slave, you would not be prosecuted for kidnapping. You would pass peacefully through free states until you returned the slave to the slave's owner, and you would be rewarded for that return. Didn't at least one state nullify the Fugitive Slave Law and said, not in our backyard?
Yeah, there were numerous northern states that did everything they could to obstruct the enforcement of that law, particularly the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which they thought was unconstitutional, notwithstanding the Fugitive Slave Clause in the Constitution. Wisconsin was the most heroic of all, and in effect said, look, no one's leaving this state without a jury trial. I mean, we have a right in our state to protect our people from potential kidnapping.
Why do you think that today, when you make the argument for nullification, people who disagree with you raise the specter of racism?
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest use of nullification was what you just told us.
Exactly.
The Fugitive Slave Law, which is horrific, does not apply in our state. Why have liberals or big government types turned that around to say the nullifiers are racists?
Well, yeah. There's been an attempt to, in effect, toxify ideas like this. Anybody mentioning the states must have some sort of sinister intentions, sits up at night wondering, how can I oppress people? If you wanted to oppress people, you would do away with states' rights. You would follow Adolf Hitler, who said in Mein Kampf that we, the Nazis, will get rid of states' rights altogether. We have the right to impose our program on the whole German nation, regardless of state boundaries. I sent you a video that I recorded that in effect mocks those who would take these serious issues and try to pretend that it's all just about race, when in fact these principles defend blacks, defend minorities. And so I hope people can check out, it's on a website now, interviewwithazombie.com.
Interviewwithazombie.com. So in the example I just gave Geraldo Rivera, if the feds said no more Hispanics in New Jersey, Chris Christie and the New Jersey legislature could invalidate that.
Absolutely.
Would you stick around, because there are some people that might not agree with you that are going to be here?
Oh, no, don't tell me that.
All right, nullify bad laws. It may not be that easy. Dissent from a libertarian and support from a conservative right after this. We're back with Tom Woods, author of Nullification. Also joining us is one of the few libertarian law professors in the land, author of Restoring the Lost Constitution, Randy Barnett of Georgetown University, and my Fox News colleague and syndicated radio talk show host, Monica Crowley. Monica, to you first. Do you think that the states have the right to nullify unconstitutional federal legislation?
I do. In certain cases, absolutely. I do think that the states, and this is enshrined in the Constitution, as you know better than anybody, that states do have the right to challenge the constitutionality of laws that are passed in Washington, D.C. that provide for undue, outrageous, and in the case of health care, unfunded mandates to the states that the states can no longer carry or cannot carry to begin with. They absolutely have the right to seek redress in the courts for laws that they deem unconstitutional coming out of the federal government.
Professor Barnett, how about the case of the Patriot Act, which lets federal agents write their own search warrants in contravention of the Fourth Amendment, and which makes it a crime for the recipient of the self-written search warrant to tell anyone about it, spouse, priest and confessor, lawyer in the lawyer's office, in contravention of the First Amendment? So obviously blatantly violative of the Constitution. Can't the states nullify it or refuse to enforce it within their borders?
When we talk about nullification, Judge, we have to keep three issues separate. First, did the original Constitution authorize state nullification? I think Professor Woods thinks definitely yes. I think probably not. We can talk about that. Second, would the Supreme Court today recognize that states have such a power? I think we'd all agree that the answer to that is definitely not, and if they don't, then state nullification is kind of a non-starter in our legal system. But third, would it be a good idea for states to have a power to repeal federal laws? And I think it would be, and I think that's the reason why the Virginia Tea Party Patriot Federation over the weekend voted to endorse a proposed amendment to the Constitution that would give the states, 2/3 of the states, the power to repeal any federal law, regulation, or tax.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Professor. Okay. So he agrees with you on whether the power should be there, but you argue that the power is there. Let's hear the argument.
Well, first of all, I agree with that amendment for the 2/3 of the states, and I put that in the book. But to me, it goes back to what were the intentions of the ratifiers. And at the Virginia Ratifying Convention, when Patrick Henry and other skeptics of the Constitution said, look, this Constitution is full of loopholes you can drive a truck through, they were told by the 5-man committee whose job it was to draft the ratification instrument for Virginia, they were told, don't worry, this government's going to have only those powers expressly delegated to it. And George Nicholas, who became the first Attorney General of Kentucky, said, if this federal government should reach for any supplementary condition to impose on you, that is, any additional power, you will be exonerated from it in Virginia.
My guess is that you supported the Patriot Act in the era in which it was enacted.
Well,
even though I've made these arguments
limited.
in some Constitution.
I had limited support because I felt that the federal government went too far in creating new bureaucracies.
Suppose the state of Virginia wants to nullify the Patriot Act at the same time it's nullifying Obamacare. Yes or no, Monica Crowley?
Like, again, as I said, in certain cases, states do have the right to challenge the constitutionality of what the federal government is foisting on them. Keep in mind, look at the argument about illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is supposed to be controlled and monitored by the federal government.
And they don't want to do it.
See this debate now.
Real quick.
But remember that the circuit courts, including the most liberal one in San Francisco, the Circuit Court of Appeals, upheld the state's rights to enforce illegal immigration.
Professor Barnett, real quickly, you've argued for nullification when you argued for medical marijuana, didn't you, before the Supreme Court of the United States?
I argued that Congress had exceeded its power under the Commerce Clause. We were arguing in court. We went to the Supreme Court. I didn't argue that the state of California could nullify federal law.
Professor Barnett, Monica Crowley, Tom Woods, the book is Nullification. You can see the arguments that it's causing. Next, is stimulus spending rescuing the world or helping to push it over the cliff? Our Freedom Fighters panel is coming up right after this.